Yeah, I think
Good, sir.
you and I have spoken before.
Yes, sir.
Chatted
We have.
in order to witness stand at preliminary hearing in November 2023. Right?
Correct.
By the way, let's just start out where you finished off. You had some questions about when you personally were made aware of one of the issues raised by the defense of Mr. Mayor's being in possession of a prop gun, and you said it was fairly recently before the trial started, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Obviously, you never spoke to Mr. Mayor's from the day of the incident till today.
Correct.
All right. You never spoke to 12E from the day of the incident till today.
Correct.
All right. You never spoke to Lou Levin from the day of the incident, correct?
Correct.
All right. You certainly don't know what Mr. Mayor Rocky has told his attorneys several years ago, do you?
I'm not aware.
Oh. And of course, you know, there's no depositions in criminal cases, correct?
Correct.
All right. So basically what you're being asked are questions related to discovery and disclosure in a criminal case, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. One second. All right, sir. So you were assigned to investigate this case, I think it was November 9th
November 9th.
of 2021, along with detectives Macho Man, correct?
Correct.
And you've been sitting here in court every day at this trial watching every witness?
For the most part, yes.
For the most part, yeah. And as the detective assigned to this case, you're familiar with all the police reports generated in connection with this case?
Yes.
And because police reports are relied on at hearings and trials like this one, as a case detective, you want to ensure that those reports are as complete and accurate as possible, right?
Yes, I mean, they are a summary of the information gathered, but there are other parts of the information that's gathered to go along with that, recordings, interviews, stuff like that, but it's a summary.
Sure. But you want that summary to be as accurate as possible, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And as a case detective, you spoke with other officers with knowledge about this case as part of your investigation?
Yes, we did.
And obviously, as a case detective, it's your job to look for all relevant information.
Yes, as much as we can, correct.
For example, you reviewed and retrieved the video recordings pertaining to this incident,
Correct, we
some of
did.
which we talked about and just seen, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. 1616 East Del Mar is one, right?
Yes.
6200 Hollywood is Hollywood Boulevard.
Yes.
Hollywood Boulevard is another. Yes, sir.
Correct.
All right. And you retrieved the Vista Del Mar video on November 9th, 2021.
That's correct.
Okay, and the Hollywood Boulevard video, I think it was a few weeks later, November 18th.
I believe that is correct.
Now, on November 8th, 2021, law enforcement received 2 9mm Luger shell casings from Mr. Ephron.
Correct, per the initial crime report, yes.
Yes. And those shell casings were submitted to the fingerprint analysis lab about 2 weeks later on November 21st, 2020.
I believe that's when they were tested, yes.
You're familiar that the fingerprints can typically be left behind on bullets when they're touched and loaded in a firearm, right?
There is always the possibility anything that's touched can leave a fingerprint trace behind.
So the answer is yes, they can, right?
Yes, sir.
And the latent print lab, the LAPD latent print lab unit completed its fingerprint analysis of those 2 shell casings on November 23rd, 2020.
That sounds correct.
All right. And after examining the casings provided by Mr. Ephron, law enforcement lifted exactly 0 fingerprints off them, correct?
That's correct. 0 prints were done.
So there were no fingerprints of anyone on those shell casings.
That's correct.
On April 20th of 2022, so we're fast forwarding a little bit, you secured a search warrant to obtain DNA swabs from Mr. Mayers.
Correct, that was included in the search warrant for that date that it was executed.
Right. And in order to obtain that search warrant, you swore to a judge that DNA from Mr. Mayers was clearly necessary for analysis for probable cause purposes as well as evidentiary purposes.
Yes, to include potential evidence that could be in custody or that could be collected at some point during the investigation. A comparison can be made. If any evidence that we have or collect along the way can be compared to.
Correct. And after getting the search warrant for Mr. Mayer's DNA, you took samples of his saliva on April 20th, 2022.
Yes, as part of that arrest, there were samples taken.
Right. And although you affirmed that DNA was clearly necessary as part of the case, law enforcement never submitted anything for DNA analysis in this case.
Correct. We didn't collect or have anything further to compare it to, at least to this point. Correct.
The alleged altercation between Mr. Ephron and Mr. Mayers took place on November 6, 2021, around 10:17 p.m.
Yes, sir.
In particular, Mr. Ephron claimed he was shot at the corner of Vista Del Mar and Selma Avenue.
Yes, in that area.
And according to the video footage obtained by you from 1616 Vista Del Mar, the physical altercation lasted about 25 seconds, that whole thing.
Roughly.
And according to you, based on your knowledge from the investigation and your review of the videos in this case, after leaving the scene of the altercation at around 10:17, Mr. Ephron initially claimed he returned to the scene at around 11:09 p.m.
Can I object as to vague as to what he's talking about when Mr. Ephron did this?
Vegas. Dead on accurate, 11:09, every minute.
Yes, sir. I'm not sure about the exact time, but I think he roughly said within an hour of the incident.
Okay. Would you agree it's somewhere around the events of that time, 11:09?
Vague as to what he did.
Okay, I could go to the preliminary hearing or just read the question and answer.
Can I object to proper impeachment?
I'm trying not to be
I don't
vague.
see it as being impeached. Why don't you just clarify what it was that,
Mr. Ephron told you 52 minutes more later, he came back to the scene, correct?
I don't recall him saying the exact time, but I do recall him saying roughly within an hour after the initial incident.
And you got that from watching the videos, correct?
On first review, yes, that's what I believe was consistent.
And I understand your testimony is now changed to say you don't think it's him, but initially, you certainly thought that person you saw was him
Yes.
at 11:09, right?
Yes, that was my belief.
Okay. And to you, at least, that was Mr. Ephron in the videos,
That was my belief because it was consistent with the time frame that he provided.
right? Was consistent with what Mr. Ephron told law enforcement.
Correct, within the hour estimate.
Okay. And that person, whoever that person was, Mr. Ephron initially said it was him, you believe it was him initially, leaves the scene at 11:11 p.m., 2 minutes later.
Roughly.
Object, the first part of this question seems of facts not evidence.
No, it's not in evidence.
all right, stop, read the question back.
And that person, whoever that person was, Mr. Ephron initially said it was him. Want me to read it again?
I can approach her, I'm trying not to speak the objection. I frankly don't remember what you said.
You aren't so comfortable, I'm not really, I'm not trying to mislead, but I'm just saying initially he said it was him, that's what my question was. I know now it's changed, both Mr. Ephron and the second. But initially, he said it was him. So whoever that person was, I started my question out with, who Mr. Ephron initially said was him, left the scene 2 minutes later.
I don't know if it's in evidence or not. I can't remember every single.
You just said it.
I would change the objection to being argumentative. If he wants to ask, did that person leave within 2 minutes? I have no problem with that. But we don't need the argumentative part at the beginning of that question.
Your Honor, I'm not. Hold on a second, I can do this easy. Did Mr. Ephron initially say that that was him?
I don't recall if he used those words exactly. I believe he made a comment that may have indicated that, but
Well, for instance, you were here when he testified at this trial.
correct.
Do you remember when he said at this trial in front of the jury that he was sure that that was him?
Yes.
Okay. So, just a week ago, or a few days ago, Mr. Ephron said that was him, correct?
Correct.
So whoever that person was, that person that Mr. Ephron swore it was him to this jury initially, left 2 minutes later.
Roughly within 2 minutes, that person left.
So if that is not, the new position is not Mr. Ephron, at least you don't think it's Mr. Ephron. Based on your testimony today, you have absolutely no video showing Mr. Ephron ever returning to the scene, correct?
Correct.
Now, amongst the video you reviewed in this case was a body cam footage won by officers at the scene who responded that night, correct?
Correct.
You watched that? Yes, sir?
Yes.
And you are aware, before Mr. Ephron or whoever that person was returned to the scene 52 minutes later, law enforcement had arrived.
Yes.
And certainly before, if Mr. Ephron returned to the scene, certainly before Mr. Ephron returned to the scene, law enforcement had arrived.
Correct.
And the police arrived at the scene about 18 minutes after the incident.
Yes, roughly.
Okay. And there were at least 7 officers there.
Yes.
And while they were at the scene of the incident, 18 minutes after it ended, these 7 officers were canvassing the area.
Yes. They are walking in and about the area of Selma and Bismarck.
And you saw them on the video searching the area of the old
Yes. Adjacent parking lot. Yes.
Yeah. Using the flashlights,
Correct.
looking on the ground. You saw them.
Yes.
I know you know this answer, I've been asking that way. You know law enforcement did not cover any casings in this case, correct?
Correct. The officer responding did not find or recover any cases.
No officers ever covered any shell casings.
No.
on the scene, right?
No. You're asking from the radio call, the officer who responded initially? No.
Yes. Or any other police officer cover any cases from the scene?
Only the officer at the front desk that, who took the casings.
Yeah, my question was from the scene.
Okay. No, not from the scene.
In fact, they didn't locate any sign of shooting, correct?
Correct. Other than the radio call.
Right. But that's a call, and you heard Officer Zizzo testify, I think it's Sergeant Zizzo now, you heard him testify, a lot of people make calls or they could be misinterpreting things, correct? You heard that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of reasons. Sometimes people are just don't stick around after.
But in any event, you'd agree that the officers who arrived 18 minutes later didn't locate any sign of the shooting.
That's correct.
And despite that, as shown on the video, after the police left and Mr. Ephron returned to the scene, he supposedly located the shell casings by himself without a flashlight within minutes.
We would object. That's Susan fact. Evidence.
I believe he said he used the light on his phone and he located it.
Within minutes.
Yes.